Hey everyone, welcome to another Energon universe discussion video. Today we're moving right along to issue number 3 of the 5-issue Duke miniseries, released Wednesday, February 28th, 2024. This issue finds Duke and Clutch in custody at the pit and awaiting a secure transfer, with Baroness attempting to forge an alliance in order to plot an escape. This interaction provides insight into Duke's character. Despite feeling let down and betrayed by his government, he still has some loyalty there and faith in Hawk specifically, holding firm in his belief that it's best if he's brought in, and that if he can just explain the recent developments to Hawk, he'll be able to clear his name and bring incriminating evidence against Mars Industries. He's also reluctant to share information about Starscream with Baroness, though it's hard to say if that's out of loyalty to his government or just not trusting Baroness. Maybe a little bit of both. Regardless, this whole interaction sets up an interesting contradiction with Duke, where he's willing to act outside of the law and his official capacity as a soldier, but he still has a degree of loyalty to the system he defied and circumvented. There are still lines he won't cross, in other words, which I imagine is intended to stand in contrast to the Baroness, who we learn also went rogue in regards to her own government, but appears to have fewer reservations or conflicting feelings about fully committing to acting in her own interests. Baroness is already a high-profile terrorist in this continuity, at least in the circles that Duke ran in, and the information we're given about her background lines up with how the character has traditionally been depicted in terms of her aristocratic heritage and her military intelligence background. As I suspected previously, desperate circumstances lead to Duke's willingness to take up an alliance with Baroness, though it certainly didn't play out quite like I was expecting, and that collaboration is almost immediately called into question once Baroness learns that there's a bounty on Duke's head. Or at least it certainly seems that way, but this might just be a fake-out cliffhanger, especially considering the cover to number 4, but you gotta admit it's not looking good for the idea of Baroness the G.I. Joe. The aforementioned desperate circumstances leading to an alliance come from the ongoing threads with Mars Industries and Destro. We see Mercer and the staff of the weapons lab from issue number 1 packing up shop, preparing for any potential fallout after Duke unexpectedly survived the attempt on his life. And this feels very G.I. Joe to me, where the bad guys erase all trace of incriminating evidence and move their operations elsewhere. But we also get confirmation that the Australian Dr. Burkhart mentioned in the first issue was, in fact, Major Bludd, who is working for Destro as a mercenary. And those police dudes with the Cobra Trooper-looking helmets that framed Duke in issue number 1, they're part of Bludd's team called the Bloodhounds, who are dispatched to kill all personnel at the pit. And there are some subtle nods to Bludd's fictional history as detailed in his toy file card and Order of Battle bio, though specifically the most concrete aspect is that this version of Major Bludd discloses that he has a few warrants out on his head, which is a handy narrative tool to reveal that there's also a bounty on Duke, as well as pointing back to his bio, which states that the original character was wanted for crimes in Rhodesia and Libya. His bio also states that Bludd has a tactical mind like a steel trap, which might explain how he got the dead soldier's vehicle to come to a stop exactly where it needed to outside of the pit in order to have the most dramatic effect. I mean, there's no bullet holes in the vehicle that I can see, so did the Bloodhounds just open the door and then kill the soldiers and then push the vehicle down a hill or something? I don't know. I do think that this is a cool bit, and it functions effectively enough as a lure to reveal the entrance to the underground base, but I can't wrap my mind around how it would actually work, so I guess Bludd being a genius is the only explanation. Major Bludd is fully modeled on his classified figure design, and that design is a modernization of his classic look. Although one detail seems to be missing, his characteristic eye patch. And this is actually a neat little thing. I've said before that you don't need much, if any, prior knowledge of G.I. Joe lore or the characters to pick up this miniseries and have a good time, but you do get a little extra out of it if you do have that extra knowledge. And I feel like this is a cool example of that in action. To totally new readers, it may seem like Major Bludd is unceremoniously shot and killed at the end of this issue, but for those of us who have encountered the character before and noticed that he wasn't wearing an eye patch, this sequence is less straightforward. I'm betting that he survives this gunshot wound, and this part is an explanation for how this universe's Major Bludd lost his eye. By the way, I think this is a really cool usage of color with the yellowish-orange line spicing up the flat red background, in addition to tracing the trajectory of the bullet going through Bludd's head. Pretty nice stuff. I've been really positive on the execution of the art in this miniseries so far, and this issue is no exception. In fact, I think Jordie Bellaire outdid herself with the color work in this issue. There's a lot of usages of reds and oranges, particularly in instances involving Mars Industries or Major Bludd and his soldiers. And we've seen this before, but it seems somehow more prominent and impactful here, now knowing what we know about the Mars-Major Bludd connection, and it's used really effectively, perhaps conveying a time of day in addition to signaling danger or being something of a visual cue for the bad guys. There's a tint over all of these sequences that's evocative of blood, the arterial substance, not the character, that is, as well as making my mind go straight to the red planet Mars and how Martian landscapes are traditionally portrayed in fiction, which I thought was a nice touch, considering how Mars Industries is pretty much the chief antagonist of the book at this point. There's a big contrast between those moments and the ones taking place underground in the pit, which are predominantly cast in cool blues. But we see the reds and blues clash in some interesting ways in this issue, like in this panel with the nice splash of reds and pinks surrounding the cool-hued Baroness, or this page with a blue-tinted Duke set against this reddish-orange background. This bit is also noteworthy because of the extra emphasis the color plays in making this image pop off the page. The explosions and Starscream are highlighted in a really interesting way that creates a memorable glowing effect, which is very similar to the examples I brought up in issue number 2. That highlighting effect is also put to good use in this panel with the explosion. In fact, this panel is a great example of all components, line work, color, and lettering working together to create an intense, striking image, with the lettering almost weaving in and out of the image, and the heavy shadows used to obscure rock and roll and clutch, as well as serving as a kind of smoke effect. This shading is given an extra punch thanks to something I'm not sure what to call other than a noise effect, with a textured blue layer that almost looks like static applied over all the shadows. But no panel better illustrates the collision of these two worlds of color as this one, where Duke is leaping towards a sidearm. The usage of color here is just gorgeous. Warm and cool tones abound, coexisting and mingling with each other in a way that I find to be really fun and pleasing to the eye. I haven't seen color palettes executed quite like this in G.I. Joe comics before, and I think Bellaire's color work is the perfect pairing for Reilly's line work. Overall, I think this is a heck of a creative team that is really complementing each other's work nicely. I'm not sure what the future holds for Skybound's G.I. Joe series, but I'm hoping we see this creative team persist beyond the 5 issues of Duke. Issue by issue, they continue to create a standout series among the excellent Energon universe titles. If they can keep this up and stick the landing, then this series has the potential to leave a lasting impact on me, potentially standing amongst my favorite G.I. Joe comics of all time. We'll see. But that's going to be it from me on this one. What are your thoughts on Duke number 3? Is the series holding your interest? Thoughts on the introduction of Major Bludd? Leave a comment below, hit the thumbs up button if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to keep up with new videos as they're released, and thank you for taking the time to watch this. It's greatly appreciated. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.